I'll ask you a question. What is the current perception in the world about that? Because, there's an awful lot of differences.
It is, yeah, absolutely. What I've been interested in regards to the line of Cain is the myth, I guess, in regards to tying it back to the relationship, the alleged relationship, I should say, between Eve and the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
And I find this fascinating regarding even the word Cain, drawing it back to Canaanites and, of course, coin and king and crown, and tying even it back to Saturn in that regards to the Kronos myth.
So the fact that Can actually in Semitic means serpent.
It does. Okay, there you go, yeah.
Well, the snake in the language of Canaan was known as Ob, or Ob, which is where we get the word Ophite, one of the words for the early Gnostic serpent worshippers. It actually means to worship the serpent. And in the Canaan language, Can also means serpent. And amazingly, when you look at the Mayan language, for instance, Can, again, means serpent, as in Kukulkan.
Yeah.
And when we look at the ancient Sumerian Akan, again, it's serpent. And in Scotland, Can is serpent, which is where we get, you may not know this, but we get a word we use canny, which means to be wise.
Okay.
We call somebody a canny person. And it comes from the Scottish, to be wise as the snake. And you get things like, for instance, Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, comes from the Babylonian Can, for serpent, and Vul, for fire. So you can see the etymology of this is just incredible. And then, then we have to think, there's this place that I went to not long ago called the Vatican. Yeah? Vatis means prophet.
Okay.
So this is actually a place of serpent prophecy.
Ah, interesting.
Yes. It's my theory in the book and DVD Secrets of the Serpent. And in most of my work, the serpent always crops up because you can't deny the fact it's there.
Sure, yeah.
That the serpent was worshipped all over the world pre-Christian times.
Yeah.
And the evidence that I've uncovered, and a great many other people have uncovered too, such as John Bathurst Dean back in the Victorian times, is that Christianity did such an amazing job at wiping it out that we now struggle like hell to find inferences of the serpent worship.
Yeah.
I've got 3 crucifixes in front of me, which predate Christianity by 400 years, from India. You can't find these things anymore because Christianity, when it went to India, smashed them all to pieces and got rid of them. Because they did not want people to see a God crucified before Jesus.
Yeah.
And the furthest back I've been able to take crucifixion is into Africa. And even today, they still crucify snakes on a cross or on a tree outside the tribal gathering as a sacrifice to their gods. And they even pierced, one particular group even pierced the side of the snake to draw off its blood and bile. And that was the basis of the first book, one of the biggest books that I had out 2 years ago with Gary Osborne, The Serpent Grail.
Yeah.
Where I actually discovered, from what my wife said, we were sat in bed one night and she said, "Did you realise that snake venom has now been found to boost the immune system?" Well, that led me into a whole new world because I'd been reading alchemy. And anybody who's read alchemy knows that the snakes there are almost every level. And anybody who knows alchemy knows that there is always more than one level to alchemy, that there is the physical work, the attempt to change one substance into another, the internal work to change ourselves into something much better, but also the search for the elixir of life on a physical level. And I actually discovered through ancient medical materia and in travelling the world and going through stuff, Egyptian texts and what have you, that snake venom and blood had actually been used to boost people's immune system in ancient times, and were mixed within a skull cup, particularly in India, which became the tantric skull cup, infused with the energy and power of the entwined serpents. the wisdom of man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an upturned skull, which was then gilded or covered in a certain metal. I've got one in front of me in my office, a tantric skull. I've got a real holy grail. And that became a cup with an elixir, which spread into tales of Buddhism. Even Buddha had one. And then it was brought into England by the Romans, who brought with them the Scythians, who brought these tales of serpent worship and serpent swords and dragons, and that spread into the tales of Arthur. And Arthur, of course, is his second name is Pendragon, which means the head dragon. And Guinevere means Queen of Serpents. So these links are all over the world, and have spread into our modern myths and folk tales. In that way, you can go almost anywhere and you can find tales of saints crushing serpents. For instance, you can go to Ireland and you can find the tale of St. Patrick eradicating Ireland of the serpents. Well, they've never had any snakes in Ireland. They don't have snakes. So he couldn't possibly have been kicking snakes out. He was actually, if it was St. Patrick, whoever it was, Christianity was certainly kicking out the serpent worshippers. Yeah, indeed. In England, in UK and across Northern Europe, we had the Druids, and they were known as adders. And we all know, of course, an adder is a snake. And they worship the snake, and they imaged it, the serpent as a Tau cross, which gets us neatly back to the mark of Cain, which was widely believed to be a Tau cross. There you go, full circle. I'm going for hours about serpents.
Sure. I'd love to kind of dissect this, because I'm still struggling in a sense of why. I mean, is this an esoteric symbol? Does it incorporate, many, as you say, philosophical ideas on a multiple level regarding, even its shape and its form? But I mean, what's your take on why a snake is equivalent, to wisdom and stuff like this?
Well, that's probably one of the wisest questions that you could have given me. It's the absolute ultimate question, and it's one that you will find so much debate and anger over these days, especially since the last couple of years there's been so much talk of serpent worship. And that's because people fixate upon one particular thing. We have to have one concept for this thing. And there isn't one. There are a great many. And that makes it so much more sweeter to me, because there are so many. I asked the question myself, why isn't it the bull? Why isn't it the ox? Why isn't it the goat? All these animals have been holy, but not ultimately holy. And so what is the reason? And there are several reasons. The first and most obvious reason is that it's a symbol of resurrection, because it slithered off into the little dark holes and recesses, left its skin or shroud behind, and came out again as if reborn. Fascinating, eh?
Yeah.
Sounds like another story that we've heard somewhere.
It does, yeah.
Sounds like the Jesus that was equated to the brazen serpent of Moses, which was a serpent on a Tau cross in the wilderness, which healed people. So there, amazing story, that alone. So that alone is an incredible, observable, physical fact. Ancient man would have seen that and would have thought that amazing, that this thing left behind its body and was born again. And that, to them, was an ultimate symbol, because as we all know, they so wanted the sun to reinvigorate the earth every new spring. It's paramount in the ancient buildings and ancient structures and texts around the globe that they worshipped the sun and wanted it to come back. And of course, what do we find all over the globe? The symbol of the serpent is equated to the power and energy of the sun all over the world. In fact, the two words etymologically are linked. When ancient man made letters, the letters came from pictoglyphs, and from symbols that he made, from the noises that came from his mouth, and the concepts and emotions that he had. And the letter S was the one for the snake.
Mm-hmm.
Virtually the whole of the Chinese alphabet was developed around the movement of the snake. So the sun and the snake are two things together. In fact, the word snake actually comes from the etymology of sun, ache, the power of the sun. Ache is power, the energy, the life force of the sun. So the etymology itself of snake comes from that, which is fascinating in itself. So it's equated to the energy and power of the sun. There are other things too. There is obviously the fact that they managed to get all kinds of elixirs and cures from the serpent, from different kinds of snakes. Because there are snakes that are neurotoxic, that affect your nerves, and so elements of it were used for your nervous system to cure pain issues. There are hemotoxic snakes which affect your blood, either make you bleed quickly or coagulate the blood, and they were used to either stop bleeding or to let the blood flow better. The bile of the snake was used. All kinds of different parts of the snake were used. But more than that, they actually cut the snake skin off and used the dimensions, the natural, sacred dimensions of the scales in order to map the time of year. They didn't need, in ancient times, they didn't need astrological charts and all the other things when they were moving, because these are nomadic people. They used the serpent skin. That's an incredible fact that Crichton Miller, the author, recently discovered and highlighted to me. Absolutely incredible. And the very wheel of the movement of the planets, it was seen serpentine, the Celtic cross that Crichton Miller talks about all the time. It was based upon the serpent eating its own tail, placed upon the symbol of the sun, which is a cross. And the reason for that is that the only star sign in the sky that never moves with precession is Draconis. It's the one that's always remains. I'm no great astronomer, and that's why I worked with Crichton Miller on his work, because he is a fantastic navigator and astronomer, which is why I discovered the Celtic cross.
Okay.
Fascinating stuff, really is. That's a whole other element. So you have ancient man that needed to navigate, because, like Sweden, the world was covered in trees. I don't know if Sweden is still covered in trees, but all the pictures we get, it still is.
Much part of it is, of course, yeah.
So the world was covered in trees. People moved around the edges, the circumference. They went in boats, little coracle boats, which they then upturned and slept underneath. And so they needed to navigate. They needed to know what time of year it was, and they needed to follow the food. And anthropologists say that man only really needed to hunt 20% of the day, because he had 80% of his day to do nothing else but work things out. So he had a damn sight more leisure time than we do.
Yeah, amazing.
Because the food was in such abundance.
Yeah.
We stop in one place and live in places where it's too cold and too hot, and that flood and all kinds of different stupid things.
Yeah.
Man's really progressed. So there's all that, and then amazingly, there's another element to it. If you actually do ingest snake venom, and no respect should anybody do this, and there is a particular kind of snake venom, and it's a particular kind of mix, so don't try it. I have not released what the mix is or what the venom for this reason, because I don't want people to do it. I actually took it, and it sends you into an altered state of consciousness, very much like the Brazilian kind of rainforest drugs that Graham Hancock spoke about recently, and